Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is Real Big Ten Football Talk +1 with Chris. Special week this week, championship week. In fact, this is it, boys and girls. This is what will determine where everybody goes for the postseason. And without further ado, let's get started with this matchup. That's right, it is the number 6 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes, 11-1, 8-1 in Big Ten play. I shouldn't have said at because this is a neutral site, my apologies. But they are playing the 21st ranked Wildcats of Northwestern, standing at 8-4, 8-1 in Big Ten play. Northwestern has had an excellent year. I really am shocked to see how excellent of a year they've had based on how they started, but they have grinded it out, tough, fought, clawed their way, pun intended, they're the Wildcats, they have clawed their way through the Big Ten Conference, and they've earned this right to play in Indianapolis this weekend to face the highly talented, explosive Buckeyes of Ohio State. And let's get started with who they played first of all. We've talked about Ohio State a lot on this show because I've covered a lot of their games. We haven't talked about Northwestern as much, so we'll talk about their games a little bit more in depth. But real quick, we'll get started with Ohio State first. They did beat Oregon State 77-31 to open up the year, give up 31 points to a weak Oregon State Beavers team. Cause for concern, crushed Rutgers the week after that, 52-3. At the time, TCU was ranked 15th in the country, is all I can go off of. You can't look at what they're doing now, what they were doing then, and Ohio State did win 40-28. Tulane, the week after that, 49-6. A Tulane team that's not bad, and I believe they are bowl-bound this year, so not bad in non-conference. At Penn State to start, in the second game of the Big Ten season, beat them 27-6 in Happy Valley. Excellent game, but Penn State could have won that game, but Ohio State did come out in the end victorious. Then Indiana, they did take a bit of a down tick as far as the domination. Did score 49 points, but gave up 26 points to a Hoosiers team that doesn't have much offense anyway. And Minnesota only put up 30 points to a Minnesota team that's not great on defense, but only did allow 14 points to Minnesota. But then they did that head-scratcher, weird, bizarre, Twilight Zone-esque loss to Purdue the week after that in West Lafayette, 49-20. I'm not even going to talk about that game anymore. And then they did beat Nebraska. That was a resurgent team that you can see that Nebraska was playing for their coach finally. They weren't just playing for themselves. They were playing for each other and their coach, and it showed because they did almost beat the Buckeyes in that game, but Ohio State did win 36-31. Then Ohio State went to East Lansing to play Michigan State. A weird game, a well-fought game, honestly. The score doesn't reflect how good of a game both teams played, but Michigan State couldn't score, so Ohio State did win 26-6. On the leg of Ohio State's punter, might I add. Then at Maryland, that was a very close, hard-fought game. I figured it would be with Maryland, but didn't expect it to be that close. But Ohio State did win 52-51. And then, of course, the resounding, shocking, can't believe it still, crushing defeat of Michigan, 62-39. I picked Buckeyes for that game, but I did not expect it to be anywhere close to that score. I expected it to be a low-scoring affair like the Michigan State game. Boy, was I wrong on that aspect, but I did pick Ohio State. For Northwestern, who have they played? They did start the year at Purdue, 31-27, a good win, considering that Purdue team did hammer Ohio State later on in the year. Then Northwestern had some head-scratcher losses after that game. They lost to Duke, 21-7. Duke's not bad, but not a great team in the ACC. And Akron, an okay team in the MAC, but I don't even think they're bowl-bound, and they lost 39-34. Again, head-scratcher loss. Then they did barely lose to Michigan 20-17. I have that as a good loss because it really paved the way for the next four for Northwestern. And it also showed Michigan themselves that they know how to fight. And then Northwestern did beat Michigan State in East Lansing 29-19. Quite an impressive victory. Beat Nebraska 34-31. Closer than I think it should have been, considering Nebraska still wasn't really... They they didn't play with the same kind of fight they played more recently. But a win's a win. A good win. Northwestern was not a great team at the time, so I had to give it a green win because of where they were, where both teams were at the time. Did beat Rutgers in Piscataway 18-15, a head scratcher of a win because, let's be honest, Rutgers is 0-9 in Big Ten play, 1-10 I believe overall, or 1-11, I can't remember. But Rutgers, again, not a good team, and Northwestern barely beat them. But then Northwestern did beat a ranked 20th in the country Wisconsin team, 31-17 after that. Then lost close game to Notre Dame, but Notre Dame just had a lot more firepower and a lot more talent. Northwestern, bless their heart, has lacked in talent for most of the time under Fitzgerald. He's done well to work with the talent that he has. I'm not saying they're a bad team. I'm saying they don't have the gaudy 5-star recruit talent that, say, Ohio State or Michigan has. But they do well with what they've got, and it showed in that game, 31-17 with Wisconsin. And it showed in the Notre Dame game. They played with a lot of fight, but they did lose 31-21. But then they did beat Iowa to claim the Big Ten West title, where they clinched it in that game, 14-10 in Iowa City. And they did beat Minnesota in Minneapolis, 24-14. Again, quite an impressive win, considering Minnesota was playing spoiler at that point, and they were playing with everything they had. They then beat Illinois last week, 24-16. Head scratcher because, to be honest, Illinois is just not a great team this year. But it's a rivalry game, as I said last week. Rivalry games can be funny, so a win's a win. I'll give it a yellow, not a red, but still cause for concern for Northwestern. Moving forward, Ohio State's recent marquee win. Of course, we have to pick the Michigan blowout. How did Ohio State's defense fare statistically? Not very well. They did allow 28 first downs to Michigan, 42.8% third down did Michigan acquire, 6 of 14, 161 yards on the ground Ohio State gave up, 240 through the air, not horrible, but they did allow Michigan's quarterbacks to get 23 of 38 passing collectively. And those quarterbacks did throw 3 touchdowns, but Ohio State did force 2 interceptions, so not bad there. In fact, good there. But they did give up 401 total yards to a Michigan team that's not a great offense, not horrible by any means, but not great. And Michigan did have 7 penalties, 72 yards, non-factor. 2 turnovers Ohio State did force in that game, quite impressive, but Ohio State also, their defense was on the field for 35 minutes. That is cause for concern moving forward. Yes, Ohio State can score quickly, they can score in bunches, and I know their defense did score 1 of those touchdowns, but, might have been 2, I can't remember, but cause for concern moving forward. You don't want your defense to be on the field for 35 minutes. That can be tough, and it can be demoralizing, but Ohio State did do well, so you can't, Ohio State, they did great, and their offense definitely supported them, but if your offense isn't supporting you, and you're on the field for 35 minutes, that can be demoralizing for defense. Now, what did Ohio State do on offense? They did get 28 first downs themselves. 45.4% on third down, 5 of 11. 171 yards on the ground. 396 yards through the air. And that was all Dwayne Haskins. 20 of 31 passing. 6 passing touchdowns. 0 picks thrown. 567 total yards. Only 1 turnover. It was the muff kickoff return in the first half. Weird play, so I still have to give it a yellow, but it was just weird. I don't really understand how that happened, but it happened, so it's a turnover. Where Ohio State really struggled, and they've been doing this all year. 12 penalties. 12 penalties for 150 yards. That's alarming. In fact, I haven't highlighted font for a while now because I just have been trying not to draw so much emphasis on one thing, but that's huge. 12 penalties for 150 yards. That's bad. And if they continue to do that, especially in this game, because Northwestern, as we'll look at, does not commit penalties very often. That can hurt you. That can stall drives, or it can keep drives going if you commit those penalties on defense. I've been saying it all year, and I'll continue to say it. Penalties can kill you. Can just sap all of momentum out of your sail in one instant. depending on the penalty and the timing, as we've talked about. And Ohio State's offense was only on the field for 24 minutes and 32 seconds. Actually, I think I'm wrong about that. My math isn't great. 25 minutes. I don't know why I put that there. But, either way, cause for concern. Northwestern's recent marquee win. It was the game that did clinch their Big Ten West crown against number 21 ranked Iowa. And it was on the road, so it's also impressive in my mind. Northwestern did win that game 14-10. What did Northwestern do on offense first? They did get 19 first downs. Not great. You want to get at least 20, in my opinion. 36.8% on third down, 7 of 19. Again, cause for concern. And you're also getting 19. You're also attempting 19 third downs. That means your offense is kind of slow. It means you're not getting first downs consistently on first and second down. You have to wait till third down. And you still didn't do a great job in doing that at only 36.8%. But you did get 184 yards on the ground. Quite impressive. But only 122 yards passing. You need to be more balanced. 15 of 30 passing, not horrible at 50%. But you did only get 1 passing touchdown and 2 picks thrown. And only 306 total yards. But only 5 penalties for 40 yards. But 5 penalties for a team like Northwestern, that's a little bit alarming because they don't commit that many penalties very often. But the 40 yards definitely isn't going to hurt you, depending on what part of the game you're committing those penalties in. Again, as we've talked about, if you want to look at a scenario, maybe you're maybe it's 4th and 1 on the 1. You know what I mean? Like your 4th and goal, you're on the 1, your opponent's 1, and you commit a false start. Well, you go from being able to try to get a quarterback sneak into the end zone to you're probably going to kick a field goal. So penalties can kill you depending on when they are committed and at what point of the game. Even 5 can hurt you. Each one can hurt you depending on when you commit them. Now, at the beginning of the drive, you're on your own 25. You commit a false start, fine, not a big deal. But throughout the game, those penalties can add up depending on when you commit them. Northwestern did also commit 2 turnovers in that game, but they did hold on to the ball for 31 minutes and 6 seconds. Quite impressive. You always want to hold on to the ball for longer than your opponent to give yourself a chance to win. Just makes sense. As long as you're not committing too many turnovers, you have a good chance to win if you hold on to the ball longer. Sometimes a great defense can be a great offense. What Northwestern's defense do against Iowa? Iowa only acquired 16 first downs, 23% on third down, 3 of 13, only had 64 yards of rushing, but Northwestern did give up 269 yards through the air. A little bit alarming. And Iowa did get 27 of 41 on passing. Got to do a better job of forcing incomplete passes if you're Northwestern, especially against the Buckeyes, who don't have very many balls hit the ground. And Iowa did get 1 passing touchdown to 0 picks thrown. I should have made that red because that is also an alarming stat because that means Northwestern isn't getting interceptions consistently. But Northwestern only gave up 333 total yards. Iowa committed 3 penalties, 35 yards, non-factor. But Northwestern did commit 2 turnovers. You want it to be at least 3, though, but 2 is still not bad. And they held Iowa to only 28 minutes and 54 seconds of time of possession. Moving forward, these 2 teams don't play each other very often, at least not in recent years, which is kind of weird to me considering they're both in the Big Ten. But they've only played each other, as you see here, twice in this decade. So I'd like to see them play more often because I think both teams are so good and so well coached. I like seeing teams like that play against each other. They're so well coached, so well respected. It's just a shame, in my opinion, they don't play each other more often in the regular season. Last time they played each other was in 2016. Ohio State did win 24-20 in Columbus. Well-fought game. I did watch that game. It was an excellent game played by both teams. 2013, last time they both played each other while ranked. Number 4 Buckeyes did beat Northwestern 40-30 in Evanston. In 2008, the ranked Ohio State team crushed Northwestern in Evanston 45-10. 2007, another annihilation at the hands of Ohio State 58-7. And in 2006, much of the same, 54-10, Ohio State. So as you can see, Northwestern has not done well against Ohio State, and as we'll look at later on, historically, Northwestern has barely touched barely tasted victory, let alone consistent wins against Ohio State. Looking at the offensive efficiency for both teams, Ohio State, quite impressive. 32 minutes time of possession per game. You always want to average at least 30. If you can average more than that, you're doing something right. 547.6 yards of total offense on average. That's second nationally. I believe second to Washington State, I believe. So, definitely excellent for Ohio State. Third down efficiency, Ohio State does do well at converting on third down at 16th nationally, 46.8%. Turnover margin, not bad at +5, but is 35th nationally. You can get above 4, you're really doing something right, but honestly, if you're above a 0 or 1, at least you're not beating yourself consistently. For Northwestern, not really bad on offense, to be honest, statistically speaking. At 351.8 yards per game, as 110th nationally. Now, maybe if you go back 20-some years, that wouldn't be bad. But in today's day and age, with the high-powered offenses, you have to look at where you rank with the rest of the country, and based on how teams play football nowadays, with offense being more important, that's a bad stat. Like I said, 20, 25 years ago, wouldn't be bad. In fact, it might be in the top 30. But in 2018, only averaging 351.8 yards of offense isn't very good. In fact, it's horrible compared to the rest of the country. Third down efficiency, not great at 40.4%. That is 57th nationally. It's okay. You're at least averaging above 40, which is kind of where you want to be. You really want to be above 45, in my opinion, but at least you're getting some third downs relatively consistently. Consistently. +3 turnover margin, not great, not horrible at 44th nationally. Northwestern does struggle with offensive efficiency. They just do. They're not a gaudy offensive juggernaut of a team. But they're consistent, they're reliable, they're tough, and they fight. That's Northwestern. Red zone offensive efficiency, quite bad for Northwestern, and okay for Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State does consistently get inside the 20. At 5 attempts per game, that is 7th nationally. Quite impressive. But when Ohio State gets inside the 20, they do struggle to score. I do believe it's because they go for it on fourth down too much and don't get it. Red zone touchdown percentage, 60%, not bad, but they are only scoring on average 76.7% of the time. That is 117th nationally. Now, looking at just that stat, you're going to think to yourself, boy, that sucks. You know, how can a team like Ohio State only score 76% of the time inside the red zone? Well, you're getting inside the red zone on average 5 times per game. That's impressive in and of itself. I believe the actual number that Ohio State has attempted had red zone attempts, I believe they've been inside the 20 60 times this year. There's something to be said about that. If you're inside the red zone that many times, hey, you're going to miss some here and there. So, looking at that 76.7%, you can kind of take it with a grain of salt in a way. Northwestern, on the flip side of that, is just horrible inside the 20 in general. They don't get inside the 20 very often at 2.8 attempts per game, as 104th nationally. But they do score touchdowns relatively often inside the 20 when they get there at 62.5%. But overall red zone scoring percentage, Northwestern 82.5%. That is 77th nationally, considering they don't get inside the 20 very often, and they don't get inside the 20 very often, and they don't score very much when they get inside the 20, is cause for concern for me if I was a Northwestern fan. Looking at passing efficiency, or passing offense now, Ohio State, that has been their bread and butter all year, and it has shown on paper. At 69.7% completion percentage, that is third nationally. 359.7 yards per game through the air, that is second nationally. This is all for Ohio State, mind you. Sacks allowed per game, 1.3. That is 23rd nationally. When you're only allowing your quarterback to get hit 1.3 times per game, or sacked 1.3 times per game, you're doing something right. Your line is pretty daggone good. And your quarterback also does well to avoid pressure, which Haskins does. In fact, Haskins kind of reminds me of Ben Roethlisberger in that way, how he can kind of dance around pressure. And he can run. He's not real quick, but he can run, like Ben Roethlisberger. And passes had intercepted. Ohio State's only had 7 passes intercepted all year. That's less than, I think that's close to 0.6 times per game. So that's not bad at all. When you're averaging less than one pass or pick thrown per game, you're doing something right. For Northwestern, they do struggle in passing, but that is, they're stronger in passing than they are in rushing, as we'll look at in a minute. Completion percentage, 59.7%. That is 65th nationally. Now you may think to yourself, well, it's only a 10% variance. Well, overall, throughout the year, if you look at all of the games, that is quite alarming in my opinion, because you could use that 10% of those passes completed. That could be the difference between getting a touchdown and going for a field goal, for instance. I mean, that's alarming for me, anyway, at only 59.7%. In this day and age, with so many teams going a lot more passing than running, and Northwestern does the same, you want to complete at least 60% of those. Under 60, even if it's just 0.3 of a point under 60, cause for concern for me. Passing per game, Northwestern struggles at 237 yards through the air. That is 61st nationally. But as we saw, if we go back, if we remember their overall offensive average, that's a good portion of their offense is through the air. And they're still only 61st nationally in just raw passing yards. And they also let Clayton Thorson get hit far too often at 2.4 times per game. My apologies. That is 86th nationally. And Thorson does throw far too many picks at 13 interceptions thrown this year. That is averaging just over 1 per game. You don't want that. You want to average less than that per game, obviously. Honestly, at this point in the season, you want to be under 10. So that's also alarming for me if I'm a Northwestern fan. You've got to clean it up, and you can't throw a bunch of interceptions against Ohio State. You're going to find yourselves in a hole quickly. Because that offense can score. Your offense struggles, so you've got to play smart, and you've got to hold on to the ball if you're Northwestern. At the very least, punt. You don't want to turn the ball over too much. You try to get something going and at least win the field position battle if you're Northwestern. Rushing, Ohio State, not great at 187.9 yards per game. That is 52nd nationally. But they have improved. And again, as we looked at last week, they did quite well on the ground against a very good running defense in Michigan. But Ohio State gives up far too many yards on the ground themselves on defense. 164.9 yards per game. That is 69th nationally. That is very alarming if you're an Ohio State fan. For Northwestern, though, on the other hand, you don't run the ball very much. And when you do, you don't get very many yards. You're only averaging 114.8 yards per game. That is 119th nationally. Northwestern, word of advice, run the ball a little bit more. It can also set up your pass. But Northwestern does do relatively well at stopping the run and only allowing 134.7 yards per game. That is 32nd nationally. But you're going up against a team that can run the ball okay. So, combining those two stats, looking at them side by side, I don't know. Anyway, Northwestern does do okay against the run. Moving on to passing defense. Ohio State does well at keeping opponents from being too accurate through the air, at only allowing 53.59%. That is 14th nationally. And Ohio State gets after the quarterback at 2.8 sacks per game. That is 20th nationally. But Ohio State does struggle at picking off opposing quarterbacks. And only 9 interceptions gained this year. That is 68th nationally. And Ohio State does struggle when it comes to giving up the long ball. They have given up 237.6 yards per game through the air. That is 77th nationally. If you look at just that, you're going to think to yourself, well, why is Ohio State so dominant? Why are they 11-1? Why haven't they lost more? Well, if you look at the way they play, they do well at, like I said, they do well at preventing pass completions. But when they allow pass completions, they're usually for 10, 15, 20, 30 yards. That's alarming. That's giving up the long ball too much. If you're Ohio State, you've got to do a better job of that moving forward. That's where you can lose. For Northwestern, you're just Right all the way around except for interceptions gained. You are allowing 62.68% of the passes completed against you. That's alarming. That's 89th nationally. And sacks per game, you're only getting 1.4 sacks per game. That's 114th nationally. You got to hit somebody. You got to get in their grill. You got to make them feel uncomfortable. And you got to force them into making mistakes. You haven't done that this year. And just like Ohio State, Northwestern has gotten 9 interceptions this year. That is also 68th nationally. Got to do a better job of coming down with those balls when they're thrown to you if you're on the defense. And Northwestern also struggles against the pass at 238 yards allowed per game. That is 79th nationally. Wake up call, Northwestern. You're playing a very good passing team. You better clean that up or you'll lose, and you'll lose badly. Just ask Michigan. Overall defensive efficiency, Ohio State has gained 20 turnovers this year. That is not bad at 37th nationally. But total defense, Ohio State definitely struggles, like I said, against the long, big plays. They have given up 402.5 yards per game. That is 72nd nationally. And the game last week against Michigan did not help that stat. Third down percentage allowed per game, however, Ohio State does well when teams get to third down. They do a good job of shutting the door. And only allowing 31.4% of the third downs converted against them. That is 10th nationally. But, looking at that stat again, it also adds substance to what I already said. Ohio State struggles against giving up big plays. And they usually give up those big plays on first or second down. Very rarely they give up big plays on third down. For Northwestern, you've gained 18 turnovers, not bad at 62nd nationally. But your total defense is only 372.7 yards per game. It's 48th nationally, not horrible, not great. Pretty much middle of the pack for Northwestern. I wouldn't say it's alarming. I would say it's caution because you're going up against such a good offense, such a well-rounded, good passing offense. That's cause for concern for me if I'm a Northwestern fan. And you haven't gone up against great passing teams except for Notre Dame, and you lost. So again, cause for concern for me if I'm Northwestern. And you have given up 34.7% on third down. Not bad yourself. Northwestern, that is 31st nationally. So that also tells me Northwestern gives up far too many big plays. But based on the stats, they don't give up as many big plays as Ohio State's defense does. Looking at scoring, Ohio State does an excellent job at scoring. They have scored 43.3 points on average per game. That is 7th nationally. First quarter, they are excellent at 9.1 points. That is 19th nationally. In the fourth quarter, on the other hand, they turn it up a notch. They open up just a different gear, and they are scoring on average 13.2 points per fourth. That is first nationally. Just last week, Ohio State did score 21 points alone in the fourth quarter against Michigan. Quite impressive for the Buckeyes. For the Wildcats, they are only scoring 23.7 points per game. It is 98th nationally. Northwestern does not do a good job of actually scoring points. First quarter, they are okay at 6.1 points scored per first. That is 62nd nationally. But in the fourth, the money quarter, the big quarter, you're only scoring 6.4 points per fourth. That is 80th nationally. You've got to score in the fourth quarter. You find yourselves down to be able to win the game. You have to be able to come back. And that tells me you're not a good team at sealing the door in the fourth by putting up points enough points to win in the fourth quarter. Defensive scoring, Ohio State does struggle. They are allowing 25.8 points per game, but it's 52nd nationally. Not great for Ohio State, and we've talked about it. They have given up far too many points to even much of inferior opponents, like Oregon State giving up 33 points. First quarter, however, Ohio State does okay at only allowing 5.1 points per first played. That is 38th nationally. But Ohio State does allow teams to stay in the game in the fourth at allowing 7.1 points per fourth. That is 70th nationally. In fact, Ohio State did give up 20 points to Michigan in the fourth quarter just last weekend. For Northwestern, excellent job on all aspects of not allowing opponents to score very many against them. They're only allowing 21.7 points per game. That is 25th nationally. In the first quarter alone, only allowing just over a field goal at 3.4 points per first. That is 14th nationally for the Cats. In the fourth, Northwestern does well at shutting the door on defense at least, at only allowing 5.7 points per fourth. That is 28th nationally. Northwestern's scoring defense does help keep them in it. By not allowing many points, you can at least give your offense a chance to score some points and win the game. And that has been what Northwestern has done most of the year. Self-imposed errors, Ohio State has plenty of them. Ohio State is committing 8.17 penalties per game. That is 123rd nationally. I don't know how it's not last. 76 penalty yards per game. But Ohio State is only committing 15 turnovers per game. That is 36th nationally, my mistake. Not bad. But the penalties are what kill you. I've been saying it. I don't want to waste too much time on this. But that is alarming if I'm an Ohio State fan. Considering, looking on the right side of the screen at Northwestern, they're only committing 2.83 penalties per game. They've got first by a landslide. The next team alone is committing on average 3-point-something penalties per game. That's dominance for Northwestern. They do not beat themselves on flags. And only 26.67 penalty yards per game. That's also first nationally for the Cats. But the Cats are also committing 15 turnovers themselves, and that's of course 36th nationally. Not bad, not great. You don't want to commit that. You don't want to commit many turnovers though against Ohio State, or you will lose quickly. Neat little tidbits for the game. I've got a few here just because I had to do a little bit of digging. Because like I said, these two teams don't play each other very much. But they did play each other for the first time in 1913. Ohio State did win that matchup in Columbus 58-0. In fact, Northwestern didn't even beat Ohio State until 1927, and that was 19-13 in Columbus. Northwestern didn't even beat Ohio State in Evanston until 1930. And Northwestern has never been ranked ahead of Ohio State in the polls in any matchup with them. Now, I'm sure Northwestern has been ranked above or ahead of Ohio State in general, but not when they played each other, is what I'm saying here. And last time both teams were ranked was in 2013, like we already talked about. Ohio State did win that game 40-30. Ohio State holds a resounding advantage in this game. In fact, it hasn't really even been close for most of the time. They are sitting at 61-14 and one tie with this Wildcats team. And we've looked at Ohio State's all-time win-loss tie record throughout the year. They're at 909 wins with a win against Michigan last weekend and 325 losses, 53 ties. Northwestern has been quite bad historically in football. Great academic school, wonderful programs, but football-wise, Northwestern hasn't been great. As a lot of you Cat fans know. Unfortunately for you, I do feel bad for you. You are at 544 wins, 664 losses, and you've had 44 ties. And this is another interesting stat I thought. Northwestern hasn't won the Big Ten title outright since 1995 under Coach Gary Barnett, which I didn't remember that he coached the Cats. My apologies, I've forgotten that. And of course, he's a great coach, so it makes sense that they would have won the Big Ten under him. Keys to the game for both teams. Ohio State must continue to utilize the run to set up the potent aerial attack like they did against Michigan. Ohio State has to play smart and clean. Northwestern doesn't beat themselves with penalties. Ohio State, you can't beat yourself with them either, or you could find yourselves losing this game. You have to force turnovers and win the field position battle like you did in the Michigan State game. Not saying this game will be similar to that because Northwestern's defense isn't as dominant as Michigan State's. But you still want to win the field position battle and give yourselves a short field. You have to force consistent 3-and-outs. You can't give Northwestern second and third chances with third down conversions. They can burn you with a big play if you continue to do that. You can't give up the long passes, and you have to hit Clayton Thorson. You have to hit him often. You have to get in his grill. You have to force him to make mistakes, bad reads, and capitalize on it. Northwestern, you have a lot you got to do, so I had to make your font a little bit smaller. You need to play smart, play disciplined in the secondary. Haskins is good at checkdowns. We saw that against Michigan. You can't rely on just his eyes. You have to stay with your assignments in coverage. You have to utilize occasional blitzers on D as well and play plenty of zone. No offense, I don't mean any offense to you, Northwestern, but you have to be honest. You don't have the speed on the outside to rely on man-to-man. You can't do it. You have to play zone, and you have to bring some corners up to blitz. You have to give Ohio State a lot to think about when you're on defense. You need to force Ohio State in consistent third and longs and get off the field by forcing punts. You're not great at causing turnovers, so you've got to win the field position battle. You've got to give your offense some short fields to work with. You have to win the time possession battle. You have to get in Haskins' face, force him outside that pocket. He's not a scrambling quarterback by nature. He can be, but he is better at throwing inside the pocket. You've got to knock him on his rear end, and you've got to get him outside of that pocket and having to focus on the rush and getting the pass completed. And to be creative on offense. Don't be afraid to go into that bag of tricks and go for it on 4th and short outside the opponent's 40. You are the underdog. You've got to play like it. You've got to play aggressive, but play loose. And you're on a neutral site, which can also help you. But you'll have a lot of Ohio State fans there because it's not very far away from Columbus. So, who to pick? Northwestern, you don't look good on paper. And when you've played against a good offense, not even a great offense, but a pretty good offense in Notre Dame, you lost. Ohio State, how have you done when you've played even a really good defense? You have won. Look at the Michigan State game, 26-6. Look at the Michigan game last week. You can score, and you can stop when it counts. Northwestern, I haven't seen that from you. I've seen consistent play. I've seen reliable play. I've seen grit. I've seen toughness from you, Northwestern. But I haven't seen all around a team that can win in a shootout. This might be a shootout, and you might get outgunned. In fact, I believe you will. I believe you'll start to give up points quickly, and you won't be able to answer. I don't think the game will be as dominant as this, but I do think Ohio State will win by quite a bit, because I think Ohio State can score in bunches. I don't believe you can. So I am picking Ohio State 48-20. Ohio State also wants to put up a statement because they want to get into the playoff. You know they do. So they're going to be marching over any team they have against them. They're going to be playing hard, just like they did against Michigan. Northwestern, I don't think you have the firepower to stop it. I think you're tough. I think you've got a lot to play for. Like I said, you haven't won a Big Ten title outright in 23 years. You've got to be thinking that in the back of your minds. You want to win for Pat Fitzgerald. I love him as a coach. I love how you play for him, but you just don't have the talent to compete against Ohio State. I don't see it. I think you could win, but my gut, my mind, my logic all points to Ohio State. The stats tell us, the body of work tells us, Ohio State has even done well against great defenses. Northwestern, statistically speaking, you don't have a great defense. You have a good defense, a solid defense, but not even as good as Michigan State's or Michigan's. And you're playing against the best offense you played all year. You haven't even played an offense as good as Ohio State. The offenses you've played that have been close to Ohio State, you've lost. I just don't see it. So, Cats, I'm sorry. I don't see you winning. I do like your team. I like where you're going. I wish you could get better talent. But this year, this game, I don't see it. I see you losing 48-20. Ohio State, it'll be a good win, and it might even propel you into the playoff. You never know. That's not what this show is about, though. I do believe Ohio State will win 48-20. Thank you for watching. Please like, share with your friends, subscribe if you like my content. I do appreciate it. If you would like to tell me how I'm doing, how horrible I'm doing, whatever, you hate my picks, you hate the fact that I picked your Ohio State over your team, let me know in the comment section below. That's what they're for. Troll me, whatever you want to do. I don't care. I'm a big boy. I can handle some criticism as long as it's constructive, because I like constructive criticism because it can help me. If it's not constructive, I don't care. But still, hit that thumbs down button if you didn't like what I talked about, you don't like my content. Please let me know why so I can help to enhance your viewing experience. Again, thank you for stopping by, and until next time, boys and girls.